Welcome back. In a moment, we'll be taking a look at virtual water, or the many hundreds of thousands of litres of water we use indirectly each day. But first, here are some other stories to keep an eye on. Afghanistan's president has announced that the country's defence minister and the chief of the Afghan army have resigned in the wake of last week's devastating Taliban attack. More than 100 people were killed on Friday at an army base near Mazar al-Sharif. Ghana, Kenya and Malawi are set to become the first countries in the world to receive a malaria vaccine. The RTSS vaccine trains the immune system to attack the malaria parasite, which is spread by mosquito bites. The World Health Organization said the jab has the potential to save tens of thousands of lives. And China is on track to completing its first space station, which should be ready by 2022. The country's space agency says it hopes to regularly send people into space to carry out research. Beijing launched their first cargo aircraft last week, which will carry out multiple experiments before returning to base. Now think about this for a moment. How is your favourite T-shirt made? One key component that doesn't show up on your shirt's label is water. It can take 2,700 litres to prepare the cotton needed to make a single T-shirt. Juliana Olienka reports.
Everything we use, wear, buy, sell and eat takes water to make. The hidden flow of water, used in commodities, is called virtual water. Campaigners are calling the human consumption of virtual water unsustainable, and here's why. Water may cover 71% of the Earth's surface, but only a small amount of this can be consumed. 97% is too salty, 2% is trapped in snow and ice, leaving access to just 1% of fresh water for everybody on the planet. Of this 1%, 11% is used domestically, 19% is used in industry, and a staggering 70% of accessible fresh water is used in agriculture. Some crops are considered more water wasting than others. Cotton farming, for example. It has long been criticised for its unsustainable use of water. An estimated 20 million tonnes of cotton are produced every year in 90 countries. And to produce just 1 kilogram of cotton, which is the equivalent to your favourite T-shirt and pair of jeans, takes more than 20,000 litres of water. That's the equivalent of about 50 baths full of water.
Well, to discuss that further, I'm joined in the studio now by Tansy Hoskins, who is a journalist who writes on social justice issue. She's also the author of an award-winning book, Stitched Up, the Anti-Capitalist Book of Fashion, an examination of the conditions inside the global fashion industry. Welcome. Why can't they recycle the water they use in particularly cotton manufacture?
Well, the problem is that the water that gets used in the fashion industry comes out the other end highly polluted. So a lot of it is used in the dyeing process, the finishing process, and that is completely undrinkable. I mean, it's completely contaminated by really horrible chemicals that you wouldn't want. As for agriculture and growing cotton, the water that comes out the other end of that process is often completely contaminated by pesticides. So the fashion industry is rendering all of this water undrinkable.
Now, they were, and they are making some steps towards trying to address that. How successful have they been so far?
Well, not very successful in my mind. I mean, the industry is using about 1.5 billion cubic metres of fresh water every year. And it's that kind of levels of consumption that are completely unsustainable. And so you'd have to see a dramatic reduction in the production of clothes in order to deal with that. I mean, that's the big problem, is the sheer size of water that's being used by the industry. And
it's been, what, a free natural resource for the manufacturers and the factories where these things are done up until now. Now, couldn't governments, couldn't territories start to say, well, we need to clean some of this water up, we need to reuse it, therefore we're going to charge you more?
I mean, that would be brilliant. I mean, that's what, campaigners want to see, is business executives and governments being held accountable for all of this water consumption. The problem is that we've replaced any kind of legislation and real responsibility with voluntary, voluntary corporate social responsibility documents which aren't worth the paper they're written on. You know, there is no real accountability in the global fashion industry, and that really needs to change.
But consumers could make that change, couldn't they, if they stop buying clothes? But my case seems to be, or the evidence seems to be, because as you say, these documents exist, policies are drawn up, but consumers still want to buy either high fashion or cheap clothes. And they don't really care about all this, or do they?
Well, I think people care now more than ever. I mean, I think the anniversary, like the Rana Plaza, the anniversary of which is today, was a watershed moment in the fashion industry, and I think it woke up a lot of people all around the world. So I actually think people do care now more than ever. I think this is a question we should be putting back to the brands. It's not the consumers who are making the clothes. I think we should be asking the brands, why are there any unethically made clothes on the market? Why are there any clothes that are, destroying our fresh water?
Well, because they all are unethically made at the moment, aren't they? They're all in it together, in the sense that they all make clothes in very similar circumstances in a few countries around the world. One measure which I notice is trying to be resisted is that it's a dynamic manufacturing process, and often brands will then, if that factory comes to the end of its life cycle, they won't stay there and rebuild another one. They'll go to a country where conditions are even cheaper still. Now, there is a resistance to that, isn't there, and a suggestion that as an industry you should stay put and try and improve things in existing plants. Any chance that will come true?
Well, I mean, so in China, for example, there's environmental organisations who are documenting water violations, and when they catch manufacturers who are making, shoes and clothes for the biggest brands in the world, the biggest brands being sold in our high street, when they catch them and report their violation, these brands don't even have to move country. They can move state within China to somewhere where the environmental agency isn't monitoring them, or where there's less legislation. So they're able to hop around and avoid any kind of punishment. Shut down that factory, open up another factory.
But let me come back to the corporate responsibility argument here. I buy that in terms of, I know it will be a good thing for corporates to do that, but the true power, surely, is in consumers. If you stop buying brand X's clothes, whatever that might be, because you criticise their stance on all this, they'll soon have to change their minds, won't they, and change their ways.
Well, you'd have to, I mean, in my opinion, you'd have to stop buying, any clothes. I mean, I think a much better strategy would be, let's have the crime of ecocide. Let's actually hold some of these executives to account for destroying the 1% of water that we have on the planet for all of us to drink. And this is water that goes back into the biosphere. It goes into the fish, which then get eaten by people. It goes into the grain. The grain gets fed to cows.
Into the food chain.
Yeah, I mean, and that it's not just staying in China, that problem. This meat is, can now be imported to countries like this.
Let me ask you, this is a particular problem with cotton, isn't it? Man-made fibres and stuff, of course, don't have a similar use of water or to the same extent. Why aren't we finding alternatives? Would that not be a way around this? Well,
there is an existing alternative, which is organic cotton, which immediately uses 70%, give or take, less water than pesticide-grown cotton.
So why isn't that being more extensively used?
Well, there's a very big cotton lobby, very big pesticide lobby. A lot of very powerful people don't want organic cotton to be as popular as cotton.
So they're protecting the status quo?
Yes,
because their profits depend on more pesticide use and cotton production?
Yes, precisely, yes.
All right. So again, it would take either industry pressure or consumer pressure by switching your choice. One thing that occurs to me is, in terms of the information available in store, the advertising is always very much about how appealing the clothes are and everything else. The actual information on the label is normally a care label, or how to keep that item looking nice. We don't actually get very much about where this was sourced, how much the person who made that T-shirt was paid, or for that matter, how much water was used and left dirty at the end of the process.
No, I mean, clothing labels are hopeless, and really, this is a public health issue. I mean, I personally want to know the chemical content of the clothes that I'm putting, on my body, and that I'm buying for children and things like that. I really think we need more information about our clothes, and definitely like who made them, which factory were they in, what were the conditions, how much were those workers made. A clothing label should be like a clothing document for everything you buy. Would be great.
But the activists, and I clearly hear you're on side with this in trying to spread that information. When you try and reach out to people to persuade them, do many just sort of go to sleep?
No. Honestly, no. Like, I genuinely think that, particularly after Rana Plaza, the fashion industry became something that people were really concerned about and really wanted to, to know how they can make it better. I mean, we're all, we live in a globalized world now. We're all on Facebook and Twitter. You can easily, you can be in contact with people in Bangladesh, in contact with the women in the factories. I think people care.
Tansy Hoskins, thank you very much indeed. We end our programme with the Insight Bite, a little something that we feel you should know. And today, one woman in America has set a record that is truly out of this world. Peggy Whiston has been weightless in space for 534 days. That's almost a year and a half. Not only does this mean she's taken the title for the longest amount of time in space, at 57, she's also the oldest woman to do this as well. This isn't the first time Peggy has broken records. When it comes to spacewalk, she's light years ahead and has now notched up more than any other female astronaut. And that's all from me for now. I'm Martin Stanford. That was Insight.